Hi there, my name is Erica Cook, and I am the Vice President for Student Affairs for Sampson University. And I wanted to get together today to talk about my recommendation, whether or not we need to have one multicultural center or our 7 separate cultural centers on campus. So before diving into that, it is important for me just to review best practices of student affairs as well as some theory and inclusive excellence tenets that we have on campus. So first, for best practices, when looking at that, we need to think about our history of student affairs professionals. We are charged as student affairs professionals to enhance the development of the whole student, and that's going to be really important as we are thinking about our decision moving forward. So also, it is important to consider the CAS standards, or the Council for Advancement of Standards in Higher Education. So these standards give us best practices for our programs and services. And so our programs and services must advocate for sensitivity and inclusion on our campus and foster this in our students with a chance or with the hope that our students will carry this over into the real world. We need to promote differences and help students discover their own perspectives and reflect on those, as well as other perspectives and reflect on those as well. Last, the best practices for student affairs according to the ACPA, we need to engage students in active learning, and then again, promote inclusion and diversity and social justice on campus. And also, a couple of the things that they highlight are valuing diversity and social responsibility. So next, it is important to consider theory, because everything that we do is backed up in theory as student affairs professionals. And as well, we have a commitment to inclusive excellence. So it's important to revisit what that really means. So first, there are a lot of theories and research that just says, identity development, this is when it happens in college. Identity development can be race identity, racial or social identity, able-bodiedness, disable-bodiedness, sexual orientation identity, any of those things. And so each of these identities and the development of them and the importance of them are outlined in each of our 7 cultural centers. So some of them are about sexual orientation, some of them address able-bodiedness or disable-bodiedness, some of them address race. So these are all important on our campus, and they're all different in their own way as well. So research has shown through maybe the critical race theory and queer theory that social identity is socially constructed. So it is important for the student to figure that out in a safe space. And that going along with that social constructed theory is the idea of marginalization and oppression versus power and dominant identities. So really in college, this is a time for students to explore that as they are learning what their identity really means to them. Because comes along with that is some chances of being marginalized in their society or discovering their dominant identity, maybe wrestling with that. So what better way to give students a safe environment where maybe staff have been through it, the staff employed at our cultural centers, the directors, alumni that have benefited deeply from our cultural centers, and giving them that safe space where students can develop that identity, learn about the history of that identity, whether it's sexual orientation or race or able-bodiedness or being a woman or a different gender altogether. This is a good way for them to really tap into that and see what that identity is about, as well as maybe see how that's going to influence them as an adult in the real world. So there are some issues in higher education that we need to consider. The first one is that there is an increase in cost and there is a decrease in support. So it is known that we are losing support from our state. So that's going to be an important thing to consider as we are going through this recommendation. Another thing to consider is the achievement gap. So with the achievement gap, we are seeing that students from higher SES and more dominant identity, especially race, are achieving in college, whereas students in a lower SES and maybe a more oppressed identity or not so dominant identity, including race, those students are not doing so well. And so the cultural centers are a good way for us to really hone in on those students and intercede on their behalf and help them and intervene to succeed in college. Another thing to consider, we do have some staff issues going on campus. So the staff, they have heard of what's going on campus. They have heard of our pending decision. And we really want them to feel like they are valued on campus. If we want to uphold our mission and values as a university, it's going to be important to have everyone on board. So it is important to let staff know that we do hear them and that we do think that they're important. Also, another thing to consider, the students. We have made 3 important decisions that have kind of rocked our students a little bit, so it's important to consider them too, and to consider what is going to happen with students and staff and other stakeholders when we make our decision. So my rationale for the news media and for you, President, and my recommendation is to go ahead and keep each of the centers as standalone centers. I do have an action plan for this, and so we will uphold each center in the following way. So first, we will host an open forum for students, community members, stakeholders to hear really our rationale behind our decision. They'll hear our decision from us, and then we will just kind of take the opportunity to get some support, maybe financial support from our stakeholders to uphold our cultural centers. We will cut spending at each cultural center by 3%. Each director will have the opportunity to maybe sacrifice, if you will, their services that they think they can do without, in hopes that we can have them return in the future. And then after each budget is reviewed, we will go ahead as the Board of Trustees, as the President and the Cabinet, we will go ahead and review what we have coming in and what our costs are now, and we will make up a deficit number. And then we will go ahead and approach our alumni from our cultural centers, as well as our stakeholders and important community members, to maybe help us close that deficit in funds. And then finally, program evaluation is important in this, and we will revisit everything going on within the next 3 months to make sure that this is still, upholding each cultural center is still cost effective, as well as effective in benefiting our students. Thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to working with you as we are continuing to impact our students here at Samson University.